The starship Resolute floated silently in the darkness of space. It was a beautiful ship, built by human hands and filled with human dreams. The crew had been traveling for 3 months now, far from Earth, far from everything they knew. They were on a mission to meet an alien race called the For the First Time. Lieutenant Commander Jack stood near the large window on the observation deck. He was a tall man with kind eyes and steady hands. He was the chief medical officer of the ship, a doctor who had spent 15 years healing people. He wore his uniform with pride, and on his shoulder was a small patch showing the medical symbol of his profession. It was a simple design, two snakes wrapped around a staff with wings at the top. Humans had used this symbol for thousands of years to represent healing and medicine. Jack watched as the alien vessel came closer. It was different from any ship he had ever seen. The design was smooth and flowing, like water frozen in motion. Lights pulsed along its surface in patterns that seemed almost musical. His heart beat faster as he realized that in just a few minutes, he would be standing face to face with beings from another world. Captain Amy Dawson stood beside him. She was a strong woman with short gray hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had commanded the Resolute for 5 years and had earned the respect of every person on board. Today she looked calm, but Jack could see the tension in her shoulders. "Are you ready for this?" she asked quietly. "I have been ready my whole life," Jack replied. "I just never thought it would actually happen." The airlock opened with a soft hiss. The delegation stepped onto the ship, and everyone in the welcoming party held their breath. The aliens were tall and slender, with silver-blue skin that seemed to glow faintly in the ship's lights. Their eyes were large and filled with colors that shifted like oil on water. They moved with careful grace, as if they were afraid of breaking something. Their leader stepped forward first. He was older than the others, his skin a deeper shade of blue. He introduced himself as Counselor, the chief diplomat of the people. His voice was soft and musical, translated instantly by the ship's computer systems. "We come in peace," Counselor said. "We have watched your species for many years. We have seen you reach for the stars, and we believe you are ready to join the community of worlds." Captain Dawson stepped forward and shook his hand in the human custom. The seemed surprised by the gesture, but accepted it with grace. "We are honored by your visit," the captain said. "Please, let us show you our ship and share a meal together." The delegation began to move forward, but one member stayed behind. She was younger than the others, smaller and more delicate. Her name was, and she served as an aide to Counselor. She had been looking around the ship with wide, curious eyes, taking in every detail. Then her gaze fell upon Jack. More specifically, her gaze fell upon the patch on his shoulder. The color drained from her face. Her silver eyes went wide with shock. Her whole body began to tremble. Before anyone could react, she dropped to her knees on the deck and pressed her forehead to the floor. The other turned and stared. Counselor looked horrified. Captain Dawson rushed forward, unsure what was happening. The human officers exchanged confused glances. "What is she doing?" someone whispered. Jack stepped toward the kneeling girl. He did not understand what was happening, but he could see that she was overwhelmed with emotion. Tears were streaming from her eyes, leaving silver trails on her blue cheeks. "Please," he said gently, "please stand up. There is no need for this." Raised her head slowly, her voice shook as she spoke. "The symbol, the sacred symbol, you carry it upon your flesh." Jack looked down at his medical patch, then back at the alien girl. This is just the symbol of my profession. I am a doctor, a healer." A strange sound escaped from his throat, something between a laugh and a sob. "A healer, yes, the healers have returned. The ancient ones have come back to us." Counselor moved quickly to his side. He tried to help her up, but she would not move. His face showed a mix of emotions that Jack could not read. "Forgive her," the counselor said. "She is young and perhaps too devoted to the old stories." "What old stories?" Captain Dawson asked. What is she talking about? Counselor was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that sounded like wonder. 10,000 years ago, there was a race of beings who traveled the stars. They were called and they were the greatest healers the galaxy has ever known. They could cure any disease. They could mend any wound. They asked for nothing in return. They simply healed because it was their nature to heal. He pointed at the patch on Jack's shoulder. That symbol, the two serpents around the winged staff, that was their mark. It is carved into temples on 100 worlds. It is by species who have forgotten why they worship it, and it is burned into the memory of every civilization that remembers the old ways. The room had gone completely silent. Every human and every stood frozen, staring at the small patch on Jack's uniform. The disappeared, Counselor continued. No one knows why. Some say they grew tired of the endless wars and suffering. Some say they were destroyed by those who feared their power. But there was always a prophecy, a promise, that one day the healers would return. Finally rose to her feet. She looked at Jack with eyes full of hope and fear, and something that might have been faith. You carry their symbol, she said. Your people carry their symbol. This cannot be coincidence. The healers have returned. The galaxy will never be the same. Jack, a simple doctor from a small planet called Earth, stood in silence. He did not know what to say. He did not know what to think. All he knew was that in the space of a few minutes, everything he understood about humanity's place in the universe had changed forever. And somewhere deep in his heart, a small voice whispered that this was only the beginning. The conference room of the Resolute had never felt so small. Captain Amy Dawson sat at the head of the long table, her hands folded in front of her. To her right sat her senior officers. To her left sat the delegation. At the center of everyone's attention was Lieutenant Commander Jack, who still could not quite believe what had happened an hour ago. Had stopped crying, but her eyes never left the medical symbol on Jack's uniform. Counselor had apologized several times for her behavior, but his own hands were shaking slightly. Whatever the young girl believed, it was clear that the older diplomat was also struggling with powerful emotions. I need you to explain this to me, Captain Dawson said calmly. From the beginning, who were and why does our medical symbol matter so much? Counselor took a deep breath. He looked around the room at the human faces watching him, and he seemed to be choosing his words with great care. 10,000 years ago, he began, the galaxy was a different place. There were wars everywhere. Empires rose and fell. Plagues swept through entire star systems, killing billions. Life was brutal and short for most species. He paused, gathering his thoughts. Then they appeared. No one knows where they came from. Some said they evolved on a world at the center of the galaxy. Others believed they came from another dimension entirely. But wherever they came from, they brought something the galaxy had never seen before. They brought healing. Dr. Laura, the ship's science officer, leaned forward with interest. She was a brilliant woman who had spent her career studying the mysteries of the universe. Now she was hearing about the greatest mystery of all. What kind of healing? She asked. Every kind, Counselor replied. They could cure diseases that no other species could even identify. They could repair injuries that would kill anyone else. They developed medicines and techniques that seemed like magic to the primitive civilizations they visited. But the most remarkable thing about them was not their skill. It was their kindness. Spoke up, her voice still trembling. They never asked for payment. They never demanded loyalty or worship. They simply traveled from world to world, healing anyone who needed help. Rich or poor, powerful or weak, it did not matter to them. They believed that all life was sacred and that healing was the highest calling any being could pursue. Jack felt something stir in his chest. He had become a doctor for exactly those reasons. He had dedicated his life to helping others, not for money or fame, but because it was the right thing to do. What happened to them? He asked quietly. Counselor's expression grew sad. They disappeared. About 9,000 years ago, they simply vanished. Their ships stopped appearing. Their healing stations went silent. No one ever found there or discovered what became of them. There were theories added. Some believed they had cured all the suffering in the galaxy and moved on to help other universes. Others thought they were destroyed by jealous empires who feared their influence. But the most popular belief was that they had hidden themselves away, waiting for the right moment to return. She looked at Jack with those silver, shifting eyes. The symbol on your shoulder is the exact symbol they used. Every line, every curve, every detail is identical. I have studied their artifacts my entire life. I know their mark better than I know my own face. And I am telling you that what you wear is not similar to their symbol. It is their symbol. Doctor pulled up images on the conference room's display screen. She showed the human caduceus, the medical symbol that had been used on Earth for thousands of years. Then she showed images from the database, ancient carvings of the symbol found on worlds across the galaxy. They were identical. The room fell silent as everyone stared at the two images side by side. There was no denying it. The symbols were exactly the same. "This is impossible," Captain Dawson said. "We developed this symbol on our own. It comes from ancient Greek mythology, from a god called Hermes and a healer called Asclepius." "With respect," Counselor said gently, "how do you know? Your species is young. Your recorded history goes back only a few thousand years. What happened before that? What happened in the ages before your people could write down their stories?" Doctor's eyes went wide as she understood what he was suggesting. "You think they visited Earth," she said. "You think they came to our planet thousands of years ago and taught our ancestors about medicine." "I think it is possible," Counselor replied. "They were known to visit primitive worlds and share their knowledge. Perhaps your planet was one of them. Perhaps they planted the seeds of medical science in your civilization and left their symbol behind as a reminder." Jack stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the stars burned in the endless darkness. Somewhere out there were the ruins of the civilization, the remains of a people who had dedicated themselves to healing the galaxy. "Even if this is true," he said slowly, we are just humans. We are not miracle workers. We cannot cure every disease or heal every wound. We have limits." "But you try," said. She had followed him to the window and stood beside him, looking up at his face. "You try to heal those who suffer. You dedicate your lives to helping others. You carry the symbol of the healers and you live by their principles. Does it matter if you have their power? What matters is that you have their heart." Captain Dawson stood up and joined them at the window. "What happens now?" she asked. "What happens when the rest of the galaxy learns about this?" Counselor's face was grave. "They will come to you. Every species that remembers every civilization that has prayed for their return, they will all come to you. Some will come seeking help. Some will come seeking proof. And some will come because they fear what you represent." "Fear?" Jack asked. "There were more than healers," Counselor explained. "They were symbols of hope. They showed the galaxy that there was another way to live, a way based on compassion instead of conquest. There are empires that have built their power on despair. They will not welcome the return of hope." Jack looked down at the small patch on his shoulder. It was just a piece of cloth, a simple symbol he had worn without thinking for 15 years. Now it carried the weight of 10,000 years of history and the expectations of a galaxy full of suffering beings. He did not know if humanity could live up to such a legacy. But he knew they had to try. The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Within weeks, every major civilization had heard the story. The humans, a young species from a small blue planet, carried the symbol of the ancient. The healers might have returned at last. The Resolute's communication systems were overwhelmed with messages. Some were formal diplomatic requests. Some were desperate pleas for help. Some were threats from those who did not want to believe. Captain Amy Dawson spent her days sorting through them all, trying to decide which ones needed immediate attention. One message stood out from the rest. It came from the Confederacy, a peaceful civilization on the other side of the galaxy. There was dying. A plague had swept through their population, killing millions in just a few months. Their doctors had tried everything, but nothing worked. The disease was unlike anything they had ever seen. They were running out of time. The message was sent by Prime Minister herself. Her voice shook as she spoke, and tears ran down her pale green face. "We have heard the stories about your people," she said. "We do not know if they are true. We do not know if you are really the descendants of but we are desperate. Our children are dying. Our hospitals are full. If there is any chance you can help us, please come. We will give you anything. We will do anything. Just please help us save our people." Captain Dawson called her senior staff together. They watched the message in silence. When it finished, no one spoke for a long moment. "It could be a trap," said Commander Daniel Hayes, the ship's first officer. He was a careful man who always looked for danger. "It could be," Captain Dawson agreed. "But that woman is not lying. You can see it in her eyes. Her people are dying and she is afraid." She turned to Jack. "Doctor, what do you think? Can we help them?" Jack had been quiet since the message began. He was thinking about the disease, about the symptoms described in the accompanying medical files. It was a respiratory infection, something that attacked the lungs and filled them with fluid. The victims slowly drowned in their own bodies, unable to breathe, unable to be saved by medicine. "I do not know," he said honestly. "Their biology is different from ours. Their medicine is based on different principles, but respiratory diseases are something we understand. We have fought them for centuries on Earth. If there is anyone in the galaxy who might be able to help, it is us." Captain Dawson made her decision. "Set course for maximum speed." The journey took 2 weeks. During that time, Jack and his medical team studied everything they could about biology. Dr. Cole focused on their respiratory system. Nurse Price researched their immune response. Medical technician Chris analyzed the pathogen itself, comparing it to thousands of Earth diseases in the ship's database. By the time they arrived, they had a plan. It was a beautiful world, covered in purple forests and silver oceans. But the beauty was overshadowed by the horror of what was happening on the surface. Smoke rose from funeral pyres that burned day and night. The streets were empty. The hospitals were overflowing. Prime Minister met them at the landing pad. She was smaller than Jack had expected, barely reaching his chest. Her green skin was pale with exhaustion and grief. She had not slept in days. "Thank you for coming," she said. "Thank you for giving us hope." Jack took her hands in his. "We will do everything we can. Show us you're sick." The hospital was worse than anything Jack had seen in his career. Lay in rows on the floor, gasping for breath. The sound of their struggling lungs filled the air like a terrible symphony. Nurses moved between them, doing what little they could to ease their suffering. Jack and his team got to work immediately. The pathogen was unlike anything they had seen before, but the way it attacked the body was familiar. It reminded Jack of pneumonia, of tuberculosis, of the great plagues that had killed millions on Earth before humans learned to fight back. They had never faced anything like this. Their immune systems had no defense. Their medicine had no answer. But human medicine did. Jack developed a treatment plan based on centuries of human experience. They used antibiotics to slow the infection. They used antivirals to attack the pathogen directly. They used oxygen therapy to help the patients breathe. They used careful nursing to support the body while it fought back. The first patient they treated was a young girl named Lyra. She was only 10 years old and she had been sick for 2 weeks. Her parents had given up hope. They sat beside her bed, holding her tiny hands, waiting for her to die. Jack sat with them through the night. He adjusted her treatment. He monitored her vital signs. He held her hand when she cried out in her sleep. As the sun rose over, something miraculous happened. Lyra opened her eyes. She took a deep breath, her first clear breath in weeks. She looked up at her parents and smiled. "Mama," she whispered, "I feel better." Her mother burst into tears. Her father fell to his knees, pressing his forehead to the floor just as had done on the Resolute. But this time, the gesture was not just for Jack. It was for all of humanity. Word spread through the hospital. The human treatment was working. Patients who had been hours from death were recovering. The plague could be beaten. Jack and his team worked without rest for 3 days straight. They trained doctors in human techniques. They produced enough medicine to treat thousands of patients. They turned the tide of the epidemic. When it was over, Prime Minister stood before Jack and his team. Behind her were thousands of who had been saved from death. They filled the streets, the rooftops, every space where they could see the humans who had rescued them. "You have saved our world," said. Her voice carried across the crowd through speakers. "We asked if you were the descendants of the. We asked if the healers had truly returned. Now we have our answer." She knelt before Jack, pressing her forehead to the ground. "The healers have returned," she declared, "and we will never forget what you have done." Jack helped her to her feet. He looked out at the crowd, at the faces full of gratitude and wonder and hope. "We are just doctors," he said simply. "This is what we do." But even as he spoke, he knew that everything had changed. Humanity was no longer just a young species from a small planet. They were something more, something the galaxy had been waiting 10,000 years to see. They were the healers. And their work had only begun. Not everyone was happy about humanity's rise. Deep in the darkness between stars, there was an empire that had ruled through fear for 1,000 years. They called themselves the Dominion of, and they controlled 40 star systems with an iron fist. Their ships were the most powerful in the galaxy. Their armies were endless. Their cruelty was legendary. High Commander sat on his throne aboard the flagship Eternal Night. He was a massive creature, covered in black scales that absorbed all light. His eyes burned red with ancient hatred. He had watched the news from with growing rage. For centuries, the Dominion had told their subjects that they were a myth, a fairy tale for weak minds. They had burned the temples. They had destroyed the relics. They had killed anyone who spoke of the healers with hope in their voice. Fear was easier to control than hope. Despair was easier to rule than faith. Now some primitive species from an unknown planet had walked into the galaxy wearing the sacred symbol. They had saved a dying world. They had made the myth real. Could see the future clearly. If the humans were allowed to continue, everything the Dominion had built would crumble. Their subjects would remember the old stories. They would begin to hope again. They would begin to resist. He summoned his war council to the throne room. 50 of the most powerful warriors in the Dominion stood before him, waiting for his command. "The humans must be destroyed," declared. His voice echoed through the chamber like thunder. "They must be erased from existence. Their planet must be burned to ash. Their name must be forgotten. This is my command." The War Council bowed as one. "It will be done, High Commander." The Dominion fleet mobilized. 50 warships, each one capable of destroying a moon, gathered at the edge of Dominion space. Their weapons powered up. Their crews prepared for war. They set course for a small blue planet called Earth. News of the fleet's movement reached Captain Amy Dawson within hours. She had been expecting something like this. Counselor had warned her that not everyone would welcome humanity's new role in the galaxy. Some would see them as a threat to be eliminated. She called an emergency meeting on the Resolute. "We cannot fight them," said Commander Daniel Hayes, looking at the tactical display. 50 warships against our one ship, against Earth's defenses. It would be a slaughter." "Then we run," said Dr. Laura. "We evacuate as many people as we can and find somewhere to hide." "We cannot run forever," Jack said quietly. "And we cannot abandon Earth. Billions of people live there, our families, our friends, everything we have ever known." Captain Dawson stared at the display, watching the red dots that represented the Dominion fleet moving slowly toward her. She had never felt so helpless in her life. Then the communication system came alive. "This is Ambassador of the Republic, calling Captain Dawson of the Starship Resolute." Captain Dawson felt a spark of hope. "How did you know?" "We have been watching," replied. "The whole galaxy has been watching. The Dominion thinks they can destroy the healers and return to the old ways of fear and despair. They are wrong." A new set of signals appeared on the tactical display. Ships, dozens of ships, then hundreds. "The Republic stands with humanity," announced. "We are sending our entire fleet." More signals appeared, more ships. "This is Prime Minister of the Confederacy. You saved our world. Now we will help save yours. Our fleet is on its way." And more. "This is the Free Alliance of Thorn. We remember the healers. We will not let the Dominion silence that hope." And more. "This is the Assembly of the Pale Stars. We have waited 10,000 years for the healers to return. We will not let them be destroyed in a single day." Captain Dawson watched in amazement as the tactical display filled with friendly signals. Ships from civilizations she had never heard of, from worlds she had never visited, all converging on a single point in space, all coming to defend humanity. By the time the Dominion fleet reached the edge of the Sol system, they found 200 ships waiting for them. Cruisers with their elegant curves, destroyers with their powerful weapons, ships of every size and shape from every corner of the galaxy. And at the center of the formation, the Resolute, small and battered but still flying. High Commander stared at the display on his flagship in disbelief. This was not supposed to happen. The galaxy was supposed to be afraid of the Dominion. The galaxy was supposed to bow before their power. Captain Dawson opened a channel to the Dominion flagship. "High Commander," she said calmly, "you have come to destroy us. I understand why. We represent something that threatens your power. Hope is dangerous to those who rule through fear." She paused, letting her words sink in. "But before you fire the first shot, I want you to see something." She transmitted a data package to the Dominion fleet. Every ship received it. Every crew member saw it. It was a record of every human medical mission since the encounter with the images of doctors treating alien patients, videos of hospitals being built on distant worlds, statistics showing how many lives had been saved, how many plagues had been stopped, how much suffering had been eased. "We do not conquer," Captain Dawson continued. "We do not enslave. We do not rule through fear. We heal. That is our gift, and we offer it freely to anyone who asks, even to you." The channel went silent. On the eternal night, High Commander gripped the arms of his throne so hard that the metal cracked. His officers watched him, waiting for the order to attack. But the order did not come. Because in the data package, there was something else: medical information, research, treatments for diseases that had plagued Dominion worlds for generations, cures that Dominion doctors had never been able to find. The humans had included help for their enemies in the same message that asked for peace. Understood then what he was facing. This was not a military power that could be defeated with weapons. This was something far more dangerous. This was compassion. This was hope. This was everything the Dominion had spent 1,000 years trying to destroy. And it could not be stopped with warships. Slowly, silently, the Dominion fleet began to withdraw. High Commander sat alone in his throne room as his ships retreated into the darkness. He had not lost a battle. He had lost something far more important. He had lost the future. Back on the Resolute, Captain Dawson watched the Dominion signals fade from her display. Around her, her crew began to cheer. They had survived. Earth had survived. Humanity had survived. But she knew this was not the end. The Dominion would not forget this humiliation. There would be more challenges ahead, more enemies to face, more tests of humanity's new role in the galaxy. She looked at Jack, who stood quietly by the window, watching the stars. "What happens now?" she asked. Jack smiled softly. "Now we do what healers have always done. We help whoever needs us, and we show the galaxy that there is a better way to live." It would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. But for the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy had hope. And that was enough to begin. 5 years had passed since the day an alien girl knelt before the symbol on a human uniform. 5 years since the galaxy learned that the descendants of the ancient healers had finally returned. 5 years that changed everything. Captain Jack stood on the steps of the Galactic Medical Academy on the neutral world of. He was older now, with streaks of gray in his hair and lines around his eyes. But his hands were still steady, and his heart was still devoted to the same calling that had defined his entire life. Behind him rose the symbol that had started it all. A statue of the Caduceus, 10 stories tall, carved from white stone that glowed softly in the light of 3 distant suns. It was visible from orbit, a beacon for anyone who needed help, a promise that they would not be turned away. The courtyard below was filled with students. Thousands of young beings from 100 different species, all wearing the simple uniform of the academy, with their silver-blue skin, with their gentle green faces. Creatures that Jack had never seen before, from worlds he had never visited. All of them had come to learn the art of healing. Even a few stood among the crowd. They were easy to spot, with their dark scales and red eyes. 5 years ago, their empire had tried to destroy humanity. Now their young people traveled across the galaxy to study human medicine, to learn the ways of compassion that their ancestors had tried so hard to suppress. The Dominion of still existed, but it was not the same empire it had been. High Commander had died 2 years ago, some said of a broken heart. His successors had been forced to change, to open their borders, to let hope creep back into worlds that had known only fear for generations. The change was slow, but it was real. Ambassador stood beside Jack on the steps. She was no longer the young aide who had fallen to her knees on the Resolute. She was now one of the most respected diplomats in the galaxy, a bridge between humanity and the countless civilizations that sought their help. "Do you remember that first day?" she asked quietly. "Do you remember how afraid I was?" Jack smiled. "You were not afraid, you were overwhelmed. There is a difference." "I thought I was dreaming," admitted. "I had spent my whole life studying hoping they would return, never truly believing it would happen. And then there you were, wearing their symbol like it was nothing special." "To me, it was not special," Jack said. "It was just a patch on my uniform. I had no idea what it meant to the rest of the galaxy." "And now?" Jack looked out at the sea of faces below. Students of every shape and color, all united by a single purpose, all carrying the symbol of the healers on their shoulders. "Now I understand," he said. "We were never just doctors. We were carriers of something much bigger than ourselves. A legacy, a promise, a hope that refused to die even after 10,000 years." The ceremony began. Captain Amy Dawson, now Admiral Dawson and head of the United Earth Medical Corps, stepped forward to address the graduating class. She was older too, her hair completely white now, but her voice was still strong and her eyes still sharp. "You are about to receive the mark of the healer," she told the students. "This symbol has been worn by those who dedicate their lives to easing suffering. It was worn by who traveled the stars spreading compassion and hope. It was worn by humans who carried the flame through thousands of years without even knowing its true meaning. And now it will be worn by you." She paused, letting her words sink in. "This symbol is not a badge of power. It is a promise that you will help anyone who needs you, regardless of where they come from or what they can offer in return. A promise that you will fight against suffering with every tool at your disposal. A promise that you will never give up, no matter how dark things become. She looked out at the crowd with pride. The galaxy has seen empires rise and fall. It has seen wars that destroyed entire civilizations. It has seen plagues that killed billions. But through it all, there has always been one constant. There have always been those who chose to heal instead of harm, those who chose to give instead of take, those who chose hope over despair. Admiral Dawson raised her hand in a salute. You are the members of that ancient tradition. Go forth and carry the light. The galaxy is counting on you. The students raised their hands in response, a sea of arms reaching toward the sky. Then they filed forward one by one to receive their insignia, the caduceus, the symbol of the healers, the mark that had changed the universe. After the ceremony, Jack walked through the academy gardens with. The air smelled of flowers from a dozen different worlds, all growing together in harmony. I used to wonder what happened to the original, Jack said. Where did they go? Why did they disappear? And Knelt asked. Now I think I understand. Jack stopped and looked up at the statue of the caduceus, glowing against the darkening sky. They did not disappear. They planted seeds on worlds across the galaxy. They taught other species their ways. They spread their knowledge as far as they could. And then they stepped back and let those seeds grow. You think they knew this would happen? I think they hoped it would. Maybe they knew they could not heal the galaxy by themselves. Maybe they understood that true change had to come from within, from species who learned the value of compassion on their own. So they gave us the tools and the symbols and the stories, and they trusted us to find our way. Nodded slowly, and humanity kept the flame burning, even when they forgot where it came from. We kept it burning, Jack agreed, and now we are passing it on to others. Even, the healers are not one species anymore. They are everyone who chooses to walk this path. He looked at this alien woman who had become one of his closest friends. They did not just return through humanity, he said. They returned through everyone who believes in what they stood for. That is their true legacy, not the symbol, not the technology. The belief that healing is worth doing. The belief that compassion matters. The belief that hope is stronger than fear. Reached out and took his hand. It was a human gesture, one she had learned years ago. It still felt strange to her, but also right. Thank you, she said, for everything. Thank you, Jack replied, for kneeling before a symbol I did not understand, for showing me who we really are. They stood together in the garden as darkness fell and stars appeared in the sky. Somewhere out there, on worlds they would never see, new doctors were beginning their work. New hospitals were opening their doors. New lives were being saved. The healers had returned, and the galaxy would never be the same.